beautiful land of ours, Guyana, in the Caribbean, and further afield. We trust that you will invite someone with you, and we pray as you stay tuned, you will find the blessings of God on you and yours. So stay tuned, and God bless you. We welcome you.
This evening we want to discuss the very important topic of solid waste management. You know, the scripture says that the earth is the Lord's and its fullness thereof and everything in it. And when God put us on the earth, He gave us a tremendous responsibility to care and to tend for the earth. But when we look around, you know, in society, we get a feeling that persons have not been responding the way, you know, God wanted them to respond in relation to how they care. And we see this manifested in the kinds of waste we see in the city, in particular, all over. And this is not what God expects for us. So we've actually embarked on a consultation, and several stakeholders were involved, and lots of information came out as to how we ought to conduct ourselves, how we ought to operate. We did a preliminary, you know, research, and we also found that the whole issue of attitude is so pivotal to this thing, and yet we can't find people to make that kind of attitudinal change. We saw people expressing concern. Yes, the city is dirty. Yes, this is not in good shape, but not willing to make that dedicated effort to change the situation. But we know that all is not lost, and that's why we're here this morning, and we are going to discuss this very important topic. So we want to present information to people and to this nation that can actually turn the tide of what we're seeing right now. And so we're going to be looking at the hierarchy, or what we may want to call a pyramid of solid waste management. And some of the areas in that pyramid that we'll be discussing is that of avoidance, reduction, reuse, recycle, recover, and disposal. So throwing waste away really is the last thing that we should really be doing when we look at this pyramid. So we're going to present information to you, and we hope that this information will be helpful. Gentlemen.
We found, to our surprise, that there is apathy, and perhaps in some instances a general sense of, well, hatred is a strong term, but we found indifference might be the word, between citizens and their environment. We found that situation to be quite appalling, and folk may not like those who are in charge of their environment, and so they are not careful to dispose of their responsibility in the correct way. Now, we want to make it elusively clear. The Creator Himself has clearly laid the line, established the rule when He said, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. So, when we're talking about the municipality does not own, the NDC does not own where you live. The earth is the Lord's. But all of us, all stakeholders, beginning with the householders, each household, we are all very important stakeholders, and we are stewards. And we will account, yes, to the people who run things naturally, but ultimately we will account to the Creator for messing up His earth. And we would like to put this because the greatest challenge we found is the attitudinal one. And people are not necessarily going to change their attitude because they believe that the place is filthy, everybody else is doing it, and we should do it. We want you to lift your eyes above the natural fray and to see that there's someone greater than us, irrespective of our belief system. And we will all have to come to him, not just for what we call sins, but we'll come to him for everything that we do, as the scripture says, whether it be good or whether it be evil. So the attitude it's got to come from deep within us, where as adults, children, we determine we are going to take better care of our environment.
You know, I had to make an apology yesterday. In the classroom environment, I noticed one of the students left a bottle on the table. So I turned to her and I said, I hope you're not going to leave that there. She said, no, I always take away my trash. And she picked it up and put it on her bag. And then she said, you know what, I'm offended. Her offense was simply me saying to her, I hope you will move that bottle. When people are brought to the understanding that you have to keep your environment clean, we can get attitude. And when your attitude goes up in the air, you will be one of those that will say, well, I ain't here. They got somebody that didn't pick it up. But we must get the right attitude. Mm-hmm. I heard it said long time ago, cleanliness is next to godliness. I don't know that it's written in the Bible. But in order to keep your environment clean, it's kind of worship. You do it as unto the Lord.
Well, the first assignment given to man, some men will have us believe that the first assignment God gave man was woman. But the first assignment God gave man begins with a W, it's work. Mm-hmm. And this is not a man becoming employed with somebody. Somebody, you know, people have some misguided notions, and work is not the course either. God intended man to work to fulfill his general purpose upon the face of the earth. So the first assignment God gave to man was work. He said to him, listen. And we can see this scripture in Genesis chapter 2 through the lens of solid waste. I want you to take care of this garden, dress and keep this garden. So that meant he was not going to leave anything out of place. He was going to constantly dress and make sure the leaves are trimmed and they are taken care of. And that was the assignment. The first assignment given to man was to take care of the garden. Now we have a city that used to be called the Garden City. Now who's minding the store? Immediately people want to blame municipality, local government, business people and so on. Let us use Michael Jackson. Let's look at the man in the mirror. And when we begin from there, then we'll look and see how do you dispose of your waste. Whether you live in the city or you live in the rural community. Listen, I've traveled the length and breadth of this country. In Riverine, I traveled many of our rivers in the 70s, and they were clean. You could smell the freshness in our creeks, and travel lots of the dirt roads in our interior. And I used to take every morning several deep gulps of air, fill your lungs with the freshness. Well, the last couple of years I've been traveling through that, retracing my steps. I am amazed with the amount of plastics floating in the and styrofoam floating in our creeks and our rivers. They were clean. And the roads, I'm shocked, literally shocked. So it's not only city, it's right across our country.
Yeah, and I think the whole issue of responsibility to, Pastor, it has removed, like, we feel sometimes that, it's no longer my responsibility to clean up because there's a cleansing department, because there's a refuge department, because there's a refuge collector. The responsibility has been transferred somehow to them rather than the responsibility starting with me. The first thing that we should try to do is to avoid creating waste and garbage. The first thing we should try to do, try to do or try to ensure that what we really need is what we really acquire or try to get, and avoid buying, purchasing, collecting things that are really unnecessary, because you find after a while you have no use for it, or even before you have no use for it, then you have inevitably created garbage right away without starting to use something. So if we can start by thinking carefully before we acquire things, we would have started on the good road or making the initial step towards preventing and reducing garbage significantly.
Yeah, because I've already said, many times that, I pay my taxes, and so because I pay my taxes, there are people set aside to do the cleaning, so I don't have to do any cleaning. So you throw things out the window of cars. I mean, up to this week, I saw that. It's so despicable. We have to change the way we think. And if we see that it starts with us, it has nothing to do with taxes to keep your space clean and start working these principles.
Pastor, you made reference to the first tier of the hierarchy, which is avoidance. And it speaks to the whole issue of the responsibility and one denying oneself, that satisfaction that might come from owning or buying something just because I have a need. And so when we understand that, I have a responsibility as a citizen, as a family member, to ensure that my actions does not contribute to an unkept environment, it brings us to that place of demonstrating an understanding of the earth being the Lord and the fullness thereof. And so I think of a family, you're living in a family environment, and you go home from work and you just take off your jacket, your trousers, and you just drop it there because mommy is there to pick it up, because my elder sibling is there to pick it up. A sense of irresponsible behavior manner. And that can transcend into the way we deal with disposing of our garbage. And so we got to be mindful of what we do, even in the home, the way we conduct ourselves in the home environment, because we say, the way we behave in the home will, show how we will behave in the general public. And so as citizens, as family members, let us begin by first ensuring in the home we do what we need to do. If we need to dispose of our refuge, let us do it in the right manner. If we need to be responsible in our actions, let us do it so that the family can benefit, the community can benefit. And
there is need for a re-examination of the way we do things. Perhaps we need to check to see what laws were there that kept our city so beautiful in the 70s and perhaps in the 80s. And perhaps we need to see how we can make amendments to see the way forward. I applaud the efforts for those who are trying and picking up garbage here and there. But garbage has filled our waterways, our gutters, our canals. There need to be a real effort to have these things removed. And I just wanted to say how aggressive we need to become. Recently in Miami, there was a new law passed that forbade the public feeding of vagrants. You know why? Because after the vagrants would have been fed, and whoever is feeding them went away feeling good and so on, used to create a whole pile of garbage, because the styrofoams, they would put them all over the place. So this law was saying you must be responsible. If you want to feed people, go and take a haul, take them there, and take your garbage away. There has to be a different approach to the way we treat them.
Attitude is formed over time, attitude and behaviors. These things just don't, people just don't start behaving overnight in a certain way, really. And I believe now is an opportune time for us to reconsider what we do in terms of teaching, in terms of education, and I think now is a very good time where this whole thing about solid waste management, the teaching must start from the home, and it must filter go into the school system, and and the churches, the mosques, wherever. And so this teaching, I think we could create a catalyst for change if we find that all stakeholders begin to start teaching the consequences. Because, for example, when you drink all you buster or whatever, and you throw it in the trench and so on, and the high tides come or the rains come, you see how it contributes to blocking. So what we have to do is to open the eyes of people to see the consequences of their action. And so I think this is a good time for us to consider the importance of education that must start from the home. Like how my brother said, the girl was annoyed when he spoke to her at the university. We have to start. I don't want to say adults, they're a lost cause. I don't think so. People can learn at any stage and age, but we need to start doing this thing from the home.
That is why the notion of a consultation on solid waste management is a very powerful and important one. It speaks to the need of collaboration. And as we pointed out, collaboration starting from the home, where parents and children can collaborate, come together, and encourage each other to take personal responsibility for their personal space. It speaks to the notion also, and it gives the opportunity where stakeholders can come together and not just identify the problem, but identify best practices, seek solutions. So that attitudinal change that we want to see, it will begin to make sense, because everybody will be saying the same thing and speaking the same language.
Earlier my brother mentioned that in the 80s, the city was kept clean, and he was wondering about the laws. Now I believe we more or less have the same laws, but one of the things that has changed since then is that we use a lot of plastics. In the 80s, we didn't have these many plastic containers available. So it means that some of the things that we might have done in the 80s, we can't quite do it the same way as we in today's society. So, for example, very often we buy ice cream. We get it in a plastic container. How many of us think that, instead of throwing away that container and going and buy a special container to store my whatever it is you want to store in your refrigerator, let us use that container as something, as a utensil to hold my whatever it is that you'll be putting in your refrigerator. So in that way, you reuse, because there's some things inevitably there's little we can do with plastics. Unfortunately, we've gone down that road, and I don't think there's much chance of us turning back at this stage. But we can reuse. We can reuse things, and therefore ensure that it doesn't become at least immediately, it won't become a part of our landfill sites. Because as you know, plastics, they stay forever.
But the thing about it is that I agree and endorse what you're saying here. But legislation, while good, will not change the way people think and the way people behave. I mean, people decide, I will pay it. So what? I'll pay it. We have to appeal to people to understand that they have a part to play. And it's not only they have a part to play, it's not a one-sided thing. While we are appealing to householders, we have to appeal for a timely collection of whatever waste might be disposed of, so it wouldn't languish in the streets and rot in the streets. So there are some people, some organizations who are duty-bound to collect and to transport the trash from off the streets. And I think one of the things we should really explore is giving the city a clean morning. At the end of the day, the end of business, at the end of school, people throw tantrum ball and paper and all those kinds of things all over. When I was going to school, you used to borrow in a little piece of paper, you throw it in the ground. But the next day, at the beginning, you have a stick, somebody's got a box, and you're walking through the school picking up all the paper. Now, I'm sure you have your parents sending me son to school to pick up no paper, and we have missed a golden opportunity to teach children the importance of a clean environment. And I tell you, that thing did a number on us when you had to take a stick or whatever and pick up the paper in the yard, in the schoolyard. It was a real test, they were like a practicum. Listen, don't do this, because you don't want, you Rasta to go again Friday, and you don't want to have to pick up a whole set of paper in the yard. We need to allow our children to experience this, because in the 70s and 80s, I don't think we had these fast food places, right? So you didn't have all these boxes and all those kinds of things. I think the fast food I remember was a place called Oasis. I don't think that place exists anymore. We used to buy something called chicken in the rough. That tells my age, it's a long time ago. Now you have all of these kinds of other chickens and fast food. The thing about it is that now, I remember in the early 80s going to America, and I saw people eating in public. Young ladies drinking tea, and I thought they were vulgar. How is it you don't drink tea at home? No, we have now become an urbanized community. Look and see what's happening. The city is, the urban community is stretched along, for example, along the East Bank. In order to travel that corridor to bring your children to school, people have to leave home at 5 o'clock and 5:30. Guess where we're now having breakfast? In the cars, in the vehicles. And guess where else? Standing in the street. People come to town and eat breakfast. What they use, styrofoam, and then they throw it out through the window, those kinds of things. Society is dynamic, it is always changing. But the whole important thing, what we have to instill in our homes, as was stated earlier, let us develop this attitude. We will keep the place clean. And as we practice that, we will demand from those who have to collect that they will collect in a timely way, a timely manner. And so when we come to work in the morning, the entire city is clean.
One of the things we can also do, as Pastor you just described the whole importance of people having breakfast on their way to work and so on. The businesses, people who are doing catering and all of that can also invest in biodegradable products, like for example the plates, the boxes, and so on. So we wouldn't have all those styrofoam boxes around the place. So that's an area that they can also invest in.
There is some need for incentive for collection. I believe that the city and those that they contract cannot collect all the garbage that is around right now. I want to give an example of how I participated in collection, and this was overseas. This was in the United States. There was a big barbecue, and at the end of the barbecue, of course, there were lots of bottles and cans and so on. And I saw my host, they put the bottles outside to be collected by the sanitation gun or whatever. So I went and I took it back because I saw a little operation by the supermarket. So I took it back, and when they left, I went myself, took it to the supermarket, and I placed those things patiently in that machine. I recovered about $200 and something worth of garbage that they had there. So the need to find US dollars, US dollars. They need to find some way of having incentive for persons to go around and pick up all these plastic bottles or whatever and pay them, and you will see a better city.
Our canals will be clean. I'm telling you, they will fight each other to get those bottles and those styrofoam boxes. Once we, that is the simple reason why we don't see scrap metal on the road, because there is an economic incentive for people collecting those things, and I think that we need to move in that direction. I think the second item in that regime that you spoke of earlier was reduction. And how do we reduce waste? I mean, from a domestic level, how do we reduce waste from the domestic level? Buy what you need.
Another thing, let me add this to what you're saying, Bishop, because it's something that we practice at home. We take the skins from the vegetables and we put it in the kitchen garden. I mean, the way people are building now, most people are concreting their whole yards. But we need to get back to that place where we leave some space for a kitchen garden and we can use the skins and so on to help us, use as manure to help, you know, with the plants and so on.
Well, you're introducing a big concept of composting there, and I'm sure we're going to visit that somewhere down the road. Yes.
But you know, even as persons, you know, the financial capability improve or increase, people tend to buy more stuff. And I think you mentioned, Bishop, the concept of reduction. And therefore, what we have to do, notwithstanding the fact that you might want to live at a certain level and so on, I remember one of the presenters clearly stating, you know, you used to buy maybe some kind of fruits or something, and whatever you used to buy, it was in a limited amount because you hadn't the capacity. And then all of a sudden now you're buying a whole set of stuff and put it in the refrigerator, and then you have to throw it away because you watch it decay. So the whole concept of reduction has to do with buying exactly what you need. Notwithstanding the fact that you're better off, you might save some more money, because I myself, sometimes I look and see, and some of you might know, you cook a whole set of rice or whatever, and next thing you know, you gotta be dumping it off, you know, and that kind of thing. So I think we really want to speak to that.
Reuse is another important issue. I mean, I'm amazed. I travel in the rivers, the creeks, the canals, our roadways, the dirt road in the backlands in our country, beautiful, but plastic bags everywhere. This whole concept of reuse, I think this is a challenge to the business community. Bring sturdy plastic bags. And for people who want to, well, the advice to the people, to those of us who have to shop, take your bag to the market, take your basket to the market. And for those who do not want to take the bags and take the merchant should not give them a free bag. At the point of a purchase, charge a fee for every new bag. Let us collaboratively approach this matter. So from the household, the merchants, all of us involved, the municipality, the local government, all of us involved. And not just make Georgetown see, but Guyana clean. We'll see you next week. God bless you.
We thank you for being part of Choices. Remember, you can join us at First Assembly for any of our regular weekly services. I am Celestia on behalf of the set, reminding you that your whole life is the sum of your choices. God bless you.